Once upon a time in a kingdom far, far away, in the land ruled by kings and queens, roamed by goblins and joking jesters, there was a castle, Fenchesterton Castle. The kingdom was ruled by King Dad, the tallest and mightiest male in all the land, with his wife, the beautiful and sweet queen. King Dad and his queen had a sweet little princess, Princess Abigail. Princess Abigail, the fairest and young lady in all of the land, was protected in the kingdom from the goblins and the strangers outside. But the princess had one weakness, her love for magic, fun, and adventure, which came but once a year. The princess's birthday was getting close. Thanks to her amazing father and wonderful mom, the land knew the event would be fun. But in the dark side of the kingdom's land awaited the goblin with only one hand, seeking revenge from the Battle of 94, where the goblins tried to take over forevermore. It was King Dad and his trusted steed that saved day, slaying the beast and sending the goblin on its way. With the king's sword taking his hand, the goblin could no longer play in its band.
Grr, I'll get you for this, King Dad.
The castle a fortress with a moat, the goblin tried to attack from his boat. King's forces were too strong, they used old eggs with a stench and a pong. The goblin ran to think of a plan, perhaps a disguise, where he would dress as a man. Princess Abigail was in the tower brushing her hair when she heard the growl of a ghastly bear. She reached out to feed it some food, but noticed its strange and peculiar mood. The bear had one green and pointy claw, with slime and goo seeping from its paw. A suspicious princess let out a cry as King Dad ran out and looked him in the eye. "I know it's you, Goblin Man." It was then the goblin turned and ran.
I'll come back with another plan.
It was dinner time in the Fenchesterfield Castle. The queen serving dishes that wasn't much hassle. Ordering pizza was the queen's delight. The goblin knew this and prepared to fight. Dressed as a dude from out of town, wearing old robes covered in brown, the goblin knocked on the castle door. Queen Mom answered and looked to the floor. The goblin had forgotten to put on his shoes. Perhaps this had spoilt his elaborate ruse. With big, gangly, green and pointy toes, the goblin said,
It's a pizza condition, everyone knows.
A suspicious queen let out a sigh. She thought and asked about the goblin-like eye.
But why, oh why, do you have just one big eye?
Why, your majesty, it's but a cheese and ham allergy. I mean no harm to you and your family.
I'll take the pizza, but that's as far as you go. Here's your tip. Now thank you. Off you go.
The goblin turned and walked in shame, disappointed, a plan foiled again. But wait, a poster on the wall, wanting people to audition for the princess's ball. For every year the king holds auditions for showmen and jokers to come to the ball. Now the goblins found out he could seek his revenge for once and for all. But first he needs to prepare his act, but not until he has fed his cat. The goblin could try and resurrect the band, but he knew it would be difficult with only one hand. The goblin reaches out to Jagger, Michael and Jord, promising that this time he won't get bored. The band must practice to get to the ball. He must settle this for once and for all.
I'll do the singing, I'll be the face of the band. I can't do the drumming with only one hand.
The band would practice late into the night, with the goblin's motivation to give the king a fright. Soon the goblin forgot about his anger and despair. He would sing and dance, just like he doesn't care. Back at the castle, the auditions began. The judging was harsh for beast or man. Only the best for Princess Abigail. The judges were strict on what acts would succeed or fail. Nigel the snake slithered up to entertain the king. Surely his juggling act would get him in. The snake was scared and dropped a ball. He has no hands to catch them all. Next up is Zoe, a new humorous sheep, trying to entertain, but the judges fell asleep. Adam the horse tried to save the day. He tried to whistle, but his teeth got in the way. The king shouted out, "This isn't good enough for my princess. Whoever is next, better impress." But the king hadn't thought the application process through. When the goblin stood before him, he didn't know what to do. With the poster in his hand, the goblin could enter. He walked in the castle front row and center. The goblin and the band stepped up to perform. The king looked on, preparing to mourn. The music was great, and everyone looked on, for the goblin was singing such a wonderful song. He made the king jump to the floor and dance a jig like never seen before. The horse, snake, and sheep loved it all. Let's hope the king hires the goblin for the ball. As the performance ends, the king thanks them all. Now we have an act to perform at the ball. The goblin's dream was to one day front the band, to be the greatest in all the land. He was no longer angry with the king. He wanted to be friends with no more suffering. The goblin performed at the ball. Princess Abigail was the most pleased of them all. Her daddy and the goblins are friends at last, with all the troubles left in the past. Now they all lived happily ever after, becoming great friends with the goblins and the land. No longer would there be a division of the goblins and the people. With thanks to his band.
Goblin. Goblin. Goblin man. Goblin. Goblin. Burr. Burr. Goblin man. I'm Goblin. Goblin. Goblin.